Hey, welcome everyone to Beyond the Forecast. This time it's not going to be just me and Steve talking. Steve's actually not here this week. It's going to be Brian Michigan, our newest meteorologist. Welcome.
It's good to be here. Finally
Welcome.
good to be here.
That was a big intro. Where are you from? Tell us all about your background.
Originally from New Jersey, the Jersey Shore. Grew up surfing, skiing in the Pocono Mountains, taking trips every weekend in the winters. My first job was in Savannah, Georgia, so I'm coming from Savannah, Georgia right now. I went to Penn State University. Guess we can get into all that, but it's great to be in Virginia Beach, Outer Banks area. I'm a huge surfer, so this is a great area for me.
Yes, there's been some fun surf that we've had in years past. We're going to talk more about that. Tell me what got you interested in weather and in meteorology, because a lot of people always wonder that.
Yeah, so grew up just like really any other kid, my age in New Jersey, always going to the beach, always just playing all these different kinds of sports. I didn't really have a passion fully until I was in third grade, and it was a third grade science project, and it was pretty much right from the get-go, it was over for me. I knew I wanted to be a meteorologist. It was a third grade science project on like weather events, so just any type of severe weather event. So each group got paired with a specific weather event. So some kids got thunderstorms, some people got flooding, hurricanes, blizzards, you name it. My group got hurricanes, but it didn't really matter for me what I got, because on YouTube that night and just Google, I went into just a weather deep dive and just researched every single bit of severe weather, just phenomena, just different facts. I ended up going to school like the next week for the Scholastic Book Fair.
Oh,
and
wow.
Got like a couple of weather fun fact type of books.
Yes,
so,
that's the way to get interested.
it was that moment that I knew I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. And also the Weather Channel, I was watching that really from third grade on. I probably watched it at least once a day. So
When I was younger, going back with the Weather Channel comment, for Local on the 8s, they play smooth jazz. That was actually a big reason why I started liking smooth jazz, because its connection to the Weather Channel.
The Local on the 8s music is pure nostalgia.
Yes, it is.
For meteorologists, for me, for sure. I always think back to my childhood sometimes in like different, weather event. Like I went through Hurricane Sandy, and I remember like the week and a half leading up to it, my eyes were glued to the Weather Channel, and Local on the 8s would come on, and I just hear it, the jingle in my head. So definitely some of my most fond memories growing up, all of them weather related.
Yeah, tell me favorite season.
Favorite season? It's tough because as a surfer, I want to say fall-ish going into winter, because that's great for waves. But
yes, it is.
As someone growing up in New Jersey, there's a saying in New Jersey that you measure your life in summers, because the summertime in New Jersey, that's like, everything's going on. Everybody's home. So much fun to be had in the summer in New Jersey. So you kind of feel like the whole year leads up to the summer, and then when it's over, it's like, oh man, summer's over.
Kind of the same way in Minnesota, where I grew up too. I mean, summer is really, it's not 4 weeks, because that's just the month of July, but we have July, August, and some of June, and that's it. Because by Labor Day, not only is it back to school, but it can start getting cool.
Right. You get those big, cold air outbreaks that, start to, show signs in September up there.
Yes.
And it's just, I feel like up there, you would know because you're from there, but the process of going from summer to winter is a lot faster than maybe down here in the Mid-Atlantic, or at least where I'm from. It was kind of more like we still had September. September was awesome. We called it local summer because all the tourists would go away. The beaches were empty. It was still just as warm as like a typical summer. But then October, slowly get a little cooler, you get maybe a couple cold air outbreaks, and then, November, and it was on. So I feel like for us, it was a little bit longer than maybe in Minnesota.
Yeah, and everyone thinks of Minnesota being so cold. It isn't. I mean, when we get in the summertime, it can be 95 degrees. It can be 106 even. Yeah. And then the heat index can make it 115. So it can get hot and humid there. Humidity mostly comes from the crops and the transpiration from the leaves. And then, of course, it gets cold in the winter, too. It's just the seasons are a little bit more extreme. Yeah. One of the meteorologists that I look up to when I was younger, and still look up to now, still respect, Paul Douglas is his name. He always called the Twin Cities and Minneapolis area the Super Bowl of weather. Because it's just everything was happening there, and every time you'd get something, it'd either be a big snowstorm, big severe weather outbreak, big heat wave, something like that. Here in Hampton Roads, we can still get big snowstorms. We had one a couple months ago now, and then of course hurricanes as well. So each zone has its own Super Bowl. but not as cold here,
Right.
at least for the deep cold.
That's one thing I missed. So I started my career in Savannah, Georgia. I'm a surfer, by heart, growing
Yes.
up surfing all my life. But in the winters, I started skiing when I was early teenager. Like I think it was 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, because I surfed in the winter, starting at like 12 years old. So I was like, okay, like the winter waves are fun. Like a lot of big waves, a lot of power. But sometimes, you go long periods where it's cold, the waves are flat in the winter, and I just needed something else to do. We would get snowstorms, go sledding with your friends, but skiing was kind of like oh man, like this is just a similar feeling to surfing. Like this is kind of like I had surfing, which was like my all year round sport, and then to get through the long flat spells in the winter, resorted to skiing. So I feel like the weather has always just been a constant part of my life growing up.
Yep.
Knowing when my next surf session is going to be. Knowing if the conditions are going to be good the next weekend to go skiing. Are we going to get a pow day? Is it going to be icy? All that stuff. So it kept me locked into, wanting to be a meteorologist for my entire time growing up.
Have you ever skied or skied and surfed in the same day?
Yes. I have
Really?
skied. So in New Jersey, we have, there's the American Dream Ball, and they have an indoor ski little resort. I think it's called Big Snow.
Okay.
And
so not on a mountain. Okay.
I kind of cheated in a way.
Yeah, you cheated a little bit.
It's a little bit, it's definitely possible in New Jersey because the mountains in the Poconos are only 2.5 hours away. So you could certainly wake up, go surfing, and then easily make it to the mountains. But me and my buddies did it in the middle of the summer. We surfed, skated, and then skied all in one day. We started the day surfing. It was a fun little surf session. Went to the skate park for like an hour. From there, had a nice session at the indoor snow resort. So again, kind of cheated, awesome. But it was so much fun.
But you did it, and that's tiring too. Well, we're going to keep this conversation going. We're just going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more. We're going to talk more about surfing, about March, and a recap too as well. So a lot more coming. Stand by. All right, everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Forecast. We have been talking a lot about kind of what got you interested in meteorology, Brian, but what's all this here? This is your video.
Yeah, so this is I film my surf sessions all the time. This is from my first job in Georgia. I never knew that there was great waves in Georgia. Now, it doesn't get as big as other places on the East Coast, but you could still have some fun sessions. This is after one of the cold fronts moved through. And then this one here, this is actually a hurricane swell. It doesn't get very big, but you can sometimes get long period swell to fill in to some of the islands there. And this is actually kind of like a mini Point Break. So Point Breaks, you can get really long rides from them. This is me 2023 in September. I forget which storm it was. But yeah, like you could surf in Georgia, believe it or not. There are some little waves. It doesn't get as big as the Outer Banks or something, but I made the most of it. This is
nice.
Tybee Island is the location. So
not many places to surf in Georgia because you think of the coastline. Yeah. I don't even know how long it is, but it's very short.
Yeah, it's the continental shelf is super far from the coastline too. So as the waves come in, that friction, that interaction with the bottom kind of sucks out all the energy. It kind of acts like a sponge with how shallow it is so far out.
So think of the shelf as, if you think of the ocean, when you walk in the ocean, it doesn't just, it drops off for us humans, it's not instantly that deep.
Right.
It gets really deep once you get off of the shelf, and that can go out a few hundred miles.
Yes.
So that spongy area is for hundreds of miles, and then boom, then it really drops off.
Yeah, I would say up until the big drop of the continental shelf, it's very gradual, and that's very apparent in Georgia, where not only that, but you're kind of on, we call it the inside of the catcher's mitt of the East Coast. The coastline, it bends in, so we're right in the center there. So we don't get, waves like to focus in and go towards, points or areas that stick out a little bit further in the ocean. So that's why the Outer Banks, one, it's super close to
Whoa, what's going on here?
This is in New Jersey. This was a surf contest, this was a surf contest, a foam board surf contest. It was a ton of fun. It was basically just a contest for fun. You're not scored on, how you do on the wave. It's just who's having the most fun. These are from my hometown back in New Jersey. We get some really great waves there. I would say New Jersey, Long Island, New York, the Outer Banks, and even here a lot of times in Virginia Beach, some of the best waves, in Florida have some of the best waves on the East Coast. This is from my trip to El Salvador. I went with a bunch of buddies. This was the only time I've ever been to the Pacific Ocean. I still got to get to California, those West Coast United States locations. But
okay.
This was the best surf trip of my life. The waves were probably this size, a little overhead for the entire week I was there. And very similar to like those out west breaks. Like the continental shelf is much further to the coastline for these areas.
Yeah, much
so
closer.
Much more consistent surf. And the surf can also get much bigger. There's not much limiting the waves once they come in. Again, in Georgia, we had
this is great video here. This is beautiful. Look at that. And the thing is, when you're surfing, you can look at the landscape, but you're focused on while that wave is shaping up and walling up. So it's hard to take it all in. One thing that some people assume, and I bodyboard too, some people may think, oh, you just want the biggest wave you can get. And I would say no.
No.
You don't.
Shape.
There's a certain size where I say that's too big.
Right.
Because I don't know the equation behind it or the math behind it, but the amount of power that the water has as you increase another foot in the height of the wave, another foot higher. Once we get 8 feet, this is a really powerful wave. Think of all that water falling down on top of you. That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of power with it. So for me, the energy from the wave, I head high, so roughly 5-6 feet. That's really a great spot. And then once we start getting a little bit more overhead, then it starts to be more and more intense.
Yeah, and it's all up to preference too. It's all up to what's your comfort zone, because there's also, the bathymetry of the ocean floor goes into it as well. The shape of the wave. If it's, a wave that's a lot steeper and it kind of has that barrel to it. If it's a much steeper wave that, is breaking much faster, it's going to be a more powerful wave than one that's kind of just crumbling along down the line. But also, the bigger the waves get, the more power that they have as well.
Yes.
So that's why it's, great if you're a surfer, you got to know your limits.
Yes, you do.
Growing up in New Jersey, I've been surfing my whole life, so my limit might be different than someone who's maybe just starting out.
I've seen when we have big swells here in Hampton Roads on the Outer Banks, Surfline will put out a forecast and say, know your limits.
Know your limits.
At the end. And it's a good way to do a check, because I've always used a thing where if I'm looking at the waves from the beach, I'm watching not just like how clean they are and how fun it looks, but I'm also noticing how long does it take for it to, like right here in this video, for it to come down and the waterfall to happen. I feel like the slower that happens, the bigger the wave is, because it has to fall farther.
Fall further.
Yes.
For sure.
So it's kind of my proxy. I don't have a amount of time, but if it happens fairly quick, okay, I can handle that. But if it's really slow and then you see the water bounce back up, then like this is serious.
You're like, whoa, that might be too big for me.
This might be too big, so that could be too big. This is cool stuff. So we're going to be getting more and more into that as we go throughout the year, because we'll talk about those sessions that we'll both have. This will be fun, and kind of what makes a wave. We'll get into some more science behind it too.
100%.
Because you dropped some stuff that I don't even know about talking about the ocean floor.
Yeah.
So
ocean floor, just swell angle, the period of this. There's so many factors that go into it, which I think is why I was so hooked on surfing and weather kind of simultaneously, was because there were so many factors. And you could look and see a reading of a swell height. It could be the same for 2 different days, and each session is completely different.
Yes.
You have so many things have to align to get, great waves, especially on the East Coast, like areas like Hawaii or, Australia or maybe Fiji, for example. These locations that are known for their great surf, they kind of consistently get all these factors that align for them. Also, ocean floor, all that stuff kind of aligns for them as well. The East Coast, it's a lot more fickle. So I think that's also so much more fun, kind of growing up and traveling up and down the coast and finding a whole bunch of different waves.
A friend of mine told me this story years ago when he was much younger. I would say maybe back in the 80s or maybe 70s. I don't know the decade specifically, but when he was much younger, his girlfriend at the time gave him an ultimatum because he wanted to go surf. And the waves were good, and he lives in this area. I won't say where, and won't give their name out. But she said it's either me or the surf, as she was holding the board. And he grabbed the board and said, "See you later, babe." So hey, everyone has their own priorities, and it just shows you that waves are rare here for Hampton Roads. So I will just leave it at that.
And it's also like you get the surfing. If you get the surfing bug, it never leaves you.
Right.
I got it at a young age. My life revolves almost around surfing. Like, I wake up, first thing I do, check the waves.
Yep.
That's the first thing. Even if I have
Every day.
work, I'll check and be like, oh man, I'm really missing on this one.
Yep.
Or I'll look in Virginia Beach. I'll look in the Outer Banks. Even if I can't even get to the Outer Banks in that day,
right?
Still checking it.
Yep.
Mind surfing it in a way too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, try not to miss out. Well, speaking of catching a bug, it is springtime season. It's not the bug that may be making you sick, it's the pollen.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the warmth of the area, and we have a little bit more time to talk about some of the seasonal changes that are happening. So stay tuned. We'll have some more coming up. All right, welcome back, everyone. Beyond the Forecast. This has been fun, Brian, getting to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, it's great to be here to do this and share some of the surfing clips and just share my stoke for surfing and what got me into weather as a whole. And
we're going to be able to find you on the weekend morning newscasts.
Yes, weekend mornings, occasionally, during the weeks as well. It's good to be here. I've known about Wavy actually from my time when I was at Penn State for school, because I already knew Steve Fondero actually. He was one of my mentors for a weather communications project. And so I met him through that, and I also just did a little bit of, research about Wavy on the side too, and I was like, wow, this station's like really cool. It's in a great area, huge surf destination. Also the logo, how can you not like the logo? It's so unique. It's got the wave on the 10.
And then, of course, I worked at Wavy, so you had to come here for
and
that.
I had to work with.
I'm joking.
Jeff. Come on now.
I'm joking.
Come on.
No, so let's get into some of the graphics here. So we're talking about March in review. You've put together some of these numbers. Tell me what we got here.
It was a warm month. It was a warm, dry, and windy month. So
Very
all
windy.
the things combined.
Yes.
Pollen has been huge.
Yes.
I've struggled with pollen when I was in Savannah earlier in the year. And now it's starting to re-flare up over the past couple of weeks with just how warm it's been.
Yep.
I believe the number of days that we've hit 80 degrees or higher has been 5 for March, and most of them coming in the past week and a half, 2 weeks since I've gotten here.
And you were telling me earlier, I believe it was right before you left, before you moved, you said, hey, we just got done with our pollen season here, and now I have another one to do all over again. So you got 2 this year.
Yeah, I struggle with the tree pollen for sure, and that's the one that kicks up the most. I feel like a lot of people have problems with that as well.
Yep.
So I'm not alone in that, but highest temperature that we hit, 84. We hit that just the other day, and it was a degree shy of the record of 85. So that was something to note. The average temperature, the monthly average temperature. So you take the highs and lows of each day, you average them up, you get your monthly temperature when you combine all of them throughout the month. We were almost 5 degrees above the average for the month. So that's an indication that it was warm, and we didn't get a lot of rainfall, so not a lot of opportunities to kind of wash away some of the pollen. So it's been warm and it's been dry, and when it's dry, you can really start to lift that pollen up in the air, and it stays in the air. So every single breath you take has been one likely that has been, contributing to the allergies. Wind gusts have been a huge factor. You can see on the graphic here, we had 28 days out of 31 where the winds gusted during the day. The max gust was over 20 miles per hour. So that's easily enough to lift the pollen into the air. Strong southerly winds ahead of storms and even during storms also contributed to some of these high wind gusts. But March is typically our windiest month here in Hampton Roads.
Yes, it is.
The second is, unfortunately, April. So
yes.
Unless we get some more rain and it stays warm and it stays windy, we're in for probably a little bit more pollen as we go throughout April.
The interesting thing here that's kind of fun to see. So first of all, when we going back to the precipitation, how dry it's been, we were actually doing really good. We finally kind of broke the dry spell in January and February. Got some rain, got some snow in the area. The snow, great for the ground. We got out of the drought that we were in.
Right.
And then now we're dry again. Hopefully we can get out of this drought that's trying to develop once again. I hate droughts, especially now that we're going into growing season. January, it's not growing season, but now into April, it is. And farmers want to get in their fields, so they don't want it to be wet because they got to get in the fields. But then once they get in their fields, we got to get some rain.
Right.
So it's a tough balance right now, but I want to see our rainfall amount stay back to normal here, hopefully soon. Now back to the wind. Look at this. So April, the second windiest month of the year, 11.3 miles an hour southwest winds.
Yeah, the direction's important.
The direction changes. It goes from northwest to southwest, and that's a big reason why we warm up.
Yeah, and we look at, as we go really into the summer, it continues to stay south, southwest. Look, I think it's interesting what happens end of the year too, because you start to see it goes from southwest, more west, and then August, southeast, east in September, northeast, October, start to cool on down.
Yes, you do.
It's a fluctuation throughout the year.
Yes. It's one thing I wish, though, that we had more wind in the summertime.
Right.
Windy days in the summertime are rare, and when we look at July and August when it's 90-some degrees out,
and
8.7, it doesn't feel, most days it feels like the wind is negative 8.7.
It just feels like stagnant air.
Yes.
You're just sitting
Hot.
there, hot. It is soupy outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough going. It's rough going for sure.
Yes, it can be hot. It can definitely hot. So that's just the chart in full, so you can kind of take it all in. The windy months. When I was in school in Iowa at Iowa State, I don't know what the average wind speed was, but I remember so many days where the winds were gusting 30, 40 miles an hour going across campus. So it could be really windy there.
And this time of year, that's probably pretty common for out there as well. The winds just blow across the plains so easily. There's not much friction to slow it down.
Yep. Basically, what's happening in the atmosphere and across North America is we get punches of cold air that are coming down from Canada, from the north, and that creates these large-scale, these mesoscale areas of low pressure. Yeah. So we get much more wind and air moving around them. In the summertime, we don't have access to that cold air, so the storm systems don't get as intense, thus we don't get the wind. Where we get the wind in the summertime, here at least in this part of the world, would be from a tropical system.
Yeah.
We're not going to get a cold front coming through in July that's going to bring us a 30-mile-an-hour wind out of the north.
Right.
That just doesn't. It can happen in July. It's extremely rare.
Yeah, it's those drastic changes in temperature over a certain amount of distance that kind of tightens up that pressure gradient. And the tighter that pressure gradient, faster the winds go. And that's, again, super common out west. Not so much here as we get into the summertime. That's more during the transition season. So going from, winter to summer, you get spring. That's when our, that jet stream is really dipping into our region. And we start to get these really tight pressure gradients where the wind can flow through.
Yes.
That again in the fall as well, when we go from really a summer to winter, it kind of goes back in the other direction.
The cool thing, though, that I really like about when we have cold fronts that come through, and I don't know how many times you've observed this, but when you're outside and the cold front comes through, we know that the wind can all of a sudden pick up, kind of like ahead of a thunderstorm in a way. The wind picks up. Ooh, the air's getting a little cooler. But if you look up in the sky at the right time, you can see the big blue line with the triangle, the blue. No, I'm joking. You can't see the cold front.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm joking. No, you can't see the blue line. Ooh, there it goes. Or the warm front, the big red line comes up. No, you can't see that.
On the weather maps. That's what we're referencing.
That's what we're referencing. Sorry, that's a weather joke. That's a geeky joke. Yep. Like when the low pressure goes right above you can see the big L in the sky and the arrow circling around it. Whoa. No, you can't see that. So one thing that we're going to do on the show here as we go into the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, is we're also going to need to answer questions from you. We're going to need to answer more viewer questions. We started the show with some great ones. We're going to keep that going. The first episode that we did is we were analyzing and going through what creates thunder snow. Mm-hmm. So we took a deep dive on that. That's on the first episode if you've missed that. We're going to talk more about the science of surf and the ocean effects. We're going to talk more about hurricane season because that's coming up soon. And we're not just going to fly through hurricane season in a 5-minute segment. We're going to spend time talking about ocean temperatures, thunderstorm development in the ocean, dust from the African continent as well.
So many factors that go into a hurricane season. And think about how long a hurricane season is. It's June 1st through November.
Yes.
So there's a lot of time, a lot of different topics to discuss that kind of make for either an active season or not so active season. So definitely send in your questions. We'll get to all of that.
Yes, we'll have plenty of time to do it. It's going to be really fun. So that's all the time we have for today. Yeah. Welcome to the Wavy Weather Team, Brian.
Thanks. It's so good to be here. I'm excited to be given the weather for this area. And you'll catch me. If not here, then you'll catch me in the lineup for sure.
Yes, definitely. Okay, well, we're going to get ready for our next newscast because we have more things to do today, but we'll see you next week.